State testing season is here, and while we spend weeks drilling skills and strategies, one of the most important prep steps is often overlooked, and that is rest. That's right, giving your students a break before the big test can actually boost performance. Now, you may be thinking I'm crazy, because believe me, I've taught so many years in grade levels that are working towards the big test days. I teach in Massachusetts, and the MCAS test has been part of my reality for almost the last 2 decades. And I know that for many teachers, myself included, the first thought can be to push, go, drill, and get as much in as possible in those last weeks and days. But give yourself a moment to think about that. Shoving information down your students' throats is no way to work in those days leading up to the test, right? That's why in today's episode, we'll talk about why this is crucial, and I'm going to give you a simple 3-step framework to use creativity to let your students recharge before the test day without losing valuable learning time. This is the kind of stuff I love working with teachers on, finding ways to be creative and get inspired so that they can be inspiring in their classrooms. And it naturally helps with student behaviors too. It's truly amazing what bringing creativity and the arts into your classroom can do for both you and your students any time of the year, not just during test season. And if that sounds good to you, don't skip a beat. Join me inside SEAL Teacher Academy, where you can learn how to integrate social emotional learning with the arts to create a calm, connected classroom. SEAL stands for Social Emotional Artistic Learning, and if you're looking for ways to make your teaching more joyful and engaging while also supporting your student well-being, this course is for you. Hey friends, welcome to Enjoy Teaching Again, a podcast for teachers who love teaching but need a little inspiration to bring the joy back. I'm your host, Elizabeth Peterson, classroom teacher, arts integration specialist, and your guide to making teaching meaningful, fun, and creative again. I know your teaching days are tough with disengaged students, battling behaviors, and going home each day feeling overwhelmed and exhausted. But together, we can change that. I can't wait to share with you some creative ways to engage your students, build those important connections, and teach with creativity, confidence, and purpose. It's time for you to enjoy teaching again. So locate that cold coffee of yours, grab your favorite pen, I know you have one, take a deep breath, and let's dive in. It's time to get inspired. Now, let's be real. Standardized testing is a marathon for our students. They're expected to sit for hours, recall information, and stay focused, sometimes under some pressure. And when we run a marathon, do we train up until the night before? No way, we taper our training, we rest, we fuel up. Well, I don't, actually. I'm not a runner, but I know that part of training is knowing when to rest. And that same thing should go for our students, because without rest, all the prep that we've done might not stick. I learned this the hard way. One year when I was teaching 4th grade, before our MCAS test, I pushed my students with last-minute drills up until nearly the day before the test. And what happened? They were exhausted. I could see it in their eyes. They would just look at me when I would say, okay, and now we're going to do this. They would look at me with those eyes of, are you kidding me? And that's when my inner inspiring teacher voice came through. The next day, which was only 2 days before the big test, I tried something completely different. I gave them a rest day. And the results, well, they were sharper, they were calmer, and they were more confident on the actual test days. Honestly, what else could I ask for? By that point, we have taught them all that we can, and we just need to get them geared up to actually put their best effort in. So what did we do? Well, we actually had what I call a studio day where we work on one project for almost the entire day. And then I took some time to reflect on it and see what it taught us about how we learn. And during that day, we moved, we created, we laughed, and oh my gosh, the kids came up with so many thoughts and ideas and understandings about themselves as learners too, which was really amazing. One of my students who had always struggled with test anxiety and was really stressed out about the test told me that afternoon that her stress had been lessened and she felt a lot better about the testing days that were ahead. And that moment stuck with me. Since then, I've been a huge believer in rest days before the big test days. So let's take a look at 3 ideas of how you can have your own brain break day. All right. The first idea and the first part of this framework I want to give you is to move it and shake it and wake it. And what do I mean by it? I mean your body and your brain. You want to kick off this experience, or maybe even just kick off your day with some movement-based activities. Now, this could be something simple like just some guided stretching, just stretching your arms up, stretching yourself over to the side, stretching your legs a little bit. It could be a mirroring exercise where you or another student leads the rest of the kids, and so everything that you do, they're facing you and they do the same exact thing. Or you could even have a little dance party if you dare. Now, brain science tells us that crossing the midline of our body helps with cognitive processing. So you can also include movements where like the right hand goes to the left knee. So it crosses the midline, or what I call when I do stretching exercises with my students, the line of symmetry in our body. You move your right hand to your left knee. Maybe you move, your left knee as far over to your right as you can. Or maybe you do windmill toe touches. Go old school. Those are great. These types of movements are also great to keep in mind when you're preparing that actual morning of the big test, having students do these types of stretches and movements before they even get started on the test day. Now, the second part of this framework is to give students time to create. Now, you can have students work on a creative project that's, I would say, unrelated to the test, but it's still engaging. Maybe you could have students, write a classroom song if you wanted, or collaborate on some storytelling, or maybe do their own little art project or come up with their own poetry. You can do something simple like pick a theme like animals or geometric shapes and have students just create for 30 to 40 minutes and encourage them to really stay focused on their artwork. And that might mean using some sound tracking to help them, which I mentioned in episode 50. So go back and check that episode if you haven't listened to that yet. That might also mean taking out some privacy shields and just really emphasizing the idea that this is quiet time for students to do their own creations. One of my favorite go-to simple projects for this type of thing is to have students use the geometry templates that you might actually have inside your classroom, or one of your teacher buddies has some of these. They are plastic templates that have different shapes cut out so that the students can use all the different shapes to create some really odd, weird, funky, and pretty cool designs. You could even tie this into the artwork of Kandinsky if you really wanted to, which is kind of fun, and use his work as some inspiration for your students. And if you don't have those types of templates, that's okay. Maybe you have just different circles. I've actually collected so many different sizes of circles over the years that students can choose from to make an entire art project. Like things like the middles of the tape when the tape runs out, or, the caps on a coffee can, or cups or marker caps, anything that has a circular shape. And then once the students have created all of these shapes on their paper, they can use markers or crayons or colored pencils or even watercolors to make it look amazing. And finally, in true SEAL fashion, you want to have some time for the students to reflect. I would encourage you to have them reflect individually on paper first or in a journal, and then have them share either in small groups or as a whole class some of their thoughts, their feelings, and how they did all of that creative work. This is a great time to also ask students some guided questions. These are the types of questions I actually include in my book on studio days that will actually help students to really reflect on the creative work that they did. These kinds of questions can be simple, like asking what materials they used, ask them to describe their artwork using some good adjectives, maybe asking them if they're happy with their creation or what they might do differently the next time. And my favorite question to finish with when I do it like a studio day in my classroom or a creative time like this is to ask students, what did you learn about yourself while you were doing this? Now, if you wanted to tie this back into test preparation, you could even hold a guided visualization. Your students at this point should be in a calm, creative, restful space, and they can actually close their eyes and picture themselves confidently completing their test. Okay, so there's the 3 steps in this framework. Starting off with some movement to wake up their bodies and wake up their brains, then giving them a creative art project to complete, and finally giving them some time to reflect on what they did and really think about what they learned about themselves as they were working. Now that you have this framework of how to conduct a brain break day, I want you to try it out, okay? You can make this last, 30 to 40 minutes, or you could stretch it out for over an hour. But the important thing is to remember this: taking a break isn't losing learning time. It really isn't. It's actually setting your students up for some success. No one should be expected to cram and work constantly right up until the moment that you need to produce your work on a test, right? That's not realistic. Well, maybe you found yourself in that kind of situation, but what does that do to your body? It stresses you out. What does it do to your mind? It just totally overwhelms you, right? So this is an opportunity to really teach your students that amazing skill of self-management and being able to understand when they need a moment to pause and rest. It's not a realistic thing to just go all the time. It's not realistic, or it's not good for adults, and it certainly isn't for our students either. Testing season can be stressful, but we have the power to help our students approach it with confidence and calm. And let's face it, this type of thing is good for us as well. So give yourself permission to try something different this year. Let's do a little rest before the test, okay? I hope you give this a try. I hope this episode inspired you, encouraged you, or gave you a fresh idea to try. And if so, I would love for you to take a screenshot and text it to one of your teaching buddies. I'm so grateful that you landed here with me today, and it would mean the world to me if you would leave me a review over on Apple Podcast. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll catch you on the next episode. This is Elizabeth Peterson reminding you to get inspired so you can be inspiring to your students and enjoy teaching again.